Okay, good morning, everybody. I want to welcome you to the September 15th Board of Commissioners zoning meeting. I'd like to start the meeting with a moment of silence, prayer for those who are willing and able, and then I'll be asking you to join in the pledge of allegiance. If you please join in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, all right, thank you. All right, John, I believe the first thing we have to do is, as we all know, we're in a virtual setting right now, and we need to have a motion to continue this kind of meetings in November, December. So that I'm going to have the county attorney read the appropriate word, and I'll make the motion to approve.
Yes, sir, Chairman. This is already approved for today's meeting as well as October's. So I would ask that the board make a motion to approve it for the November 17th zoning, which is based upon the pandemic that's currently going on, to allow the BOC and the staff to attend virtually and for other arrangements to be made for virtual participation in addition to in-person participation. Based upon these unprecedented circumstances, we ask that the November 17th Board of Commissioners zoning meeting, that the BOC staff and citizens be allowed to participate in the meeting virtually. BOC members can vote by voice or by hand signal, that the time allotted for the applicants and those opposed to the applications be 10 minutes for each side. If the opposition presents for longer than 10 minutes, the equivalent number of minutes, more than the original 10 minutes, will be provided to the applicant. Persons wishing to be counted as either in favor or in opposition to an application will be recognized, and the number of persons provided to the board. Persons who wish to speak virtually in favor or in opposition to an application will identify themselves accordingly to IS technical staff for participation during the presentation of the application. And then persons who speak virtually will acknowledge and affirm that his or her testimony before the BOC is under oath or affirmed to be truthful. Otherwise, the BOC zoning meeting rules will apply except as modified during the normal course of the business of the meeting.
Okay, so moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. And I see 4 hands. Thank you very much. Passes 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Rowling.
Thank you.
With that, I'll turn the floor over to Mr. Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Board. Today's hearing will be conducted virtually and in person. I'd like to take a moment to explain the format to the people here who are participating virtually. We will recognize those on site and virtual in support or opposed to a case. They're going to be counted for the record. For virtual attendees to support or oppose a case, please indicate if you wish to speak in your Q&A box on your computer. If you'd like to speak on a case or oppose or support a case, this is what you would want to do in your Q&A box. For instance, if you're here to oppose rezoning case Z13, you'd want to type in OPP for oppose and then the case number Z13. Additionally, if you would like to speak on a case you're opposing, you would type in OPP Z13 and then type in the word speak, so we know you want to have a few moments to address the board about that case. Additionally, if you're here to support a case, you would want to use the same process. So if you're here for Z13 and you're in support, you would want to type in your Q&A box SUP Z13. Additionally, if you want to speak on the case, you would type in Z13 support SUP and then speak SPEAK. Speakers, you'll be called by name. Your line will be unmuted, so you'll be able to communicate to the board. And you will say what your name is, where you live, and that you affirm that you've been sworn in. And with that, here are the following process and procedures for today's hearing. Each case will be called in numerical order. When each case is called, we ask that the applicant stand and signify that they are in attendance so they can be counted for the record. And then we're going to call for any opposition that are here in person to be counted for the record also. At that time, we will also recognize the people here who are virtually opposed to a case. After recognizing the applicant and any opposition, the applicant and opposition here in person will be asked to come forward to be sworn in so they can present testimony to the Board of Commissioners. Each side gets 10 minutes to state their case concerns. There's not a rebuttal process. There's not a process to reserve your time. So convey all your information to the board within your 10-minute time period. Additionally, if more than one person wishes to speak on a case, you may want to coordinate with each other about what you're going to talk about, because each side only gets 10 minutes and you don't want to cover the same information twice. Then after the 10-minute presentation period by the applicant and the opposition, the board will start to discuss the case at hand. From the discussion, they may ask one or more speakers to come back to the front for questions or comments. And after that, the board will make a decision to either approve, deny, hold, or continue the case at hand. There are a couple of cases on today's agenda which have been withdrawn without prejudice and will not be heard today. First case is rezoning case Z7 of 2020, Seven Springs Development Company Incorporated. This case has been withdrawn without prejudice and will not be heard today. Next case is rezoning case Z37 of 2020, Site Centers Corp. This case has been withdrawn without prejudice and will not be heard today. Mr. Chairman and Board, there are a number of cases on today's printed agenda which have been continued or held by either staff or the Planning Commission, and these cases will not be heard today. First case is rezoning case Z13 of 2020, Arturo Martinez. This case was continued by the staff until the October 6, 2020 Planning Commission zoning hearing. So Z13 of 2020 will not be heard today. Rezoning case Z39 of 2020, KO Management Incorporated. This case was continued by the staff until the October 6, 2020 Planning Commission zoning hearing. So Z39 of 2020 will not be heard today. Rezoning case Z44 of 2020, Peach State Salvage Incorporated. This case was continued by the staff until the October 6, 2020 Planning Commission zoning hearing. So Z44 of 2020 will not be heard today. Rezoning case Z45 of 2020, Springhouse, Kennesaw. This case has been continued by the staff until the November 3rd, 2020 Planning Commission zoning hearing. So Z45 of 2020 will not be heard today. Rezoning case Z46 of 2020, Vladimir Popov. This case has been held by the Planning Commission until the October 6, 2020 Planning Commission zoning hearing. So Z46 of 2020 will not be heard today. Rezoning case Z49 of 2020, Sutter Hill Vinings LP. This case was continued by the staff until the October 2020 Planning Commission zoning hearing. So Z49 of 2020 will not be heard today. Rezoning case Z51 of 2020, Garner Group. This case was continued by the staff until the October 6, 2020 Planning Commission zoning hearing. So Z51 of 2020 will not be heard today. Rezoning case Z52 of 2020, Carl Edward DILLS. This case was continued by the Planning Commission until the October 6, 2020 Planning Commission zoning hearing. So Z52 of 2020 will not be heard today. Rezoning case Z53 of 2020, the Revive Land Group, LLC. This case was continued by the Planning Commission until the October 6, 2020 Planning Commission zoning hearing. So Z53 of 2020 will not be heard today. LUP case LUP 17 of 2020, Evangelos M. Demesta House and Joyce B. Demesta House. This case was continued by the Planning Commission until the October 6, 2020 Planning Commission zoning hearing. So LUP 17 of 2020 will not be heard today. SLUP 4 of 2020, White Oak Longline Holdings, LLC. This case was continued by the staff until the October 6, 2020 Planning Commission zoning hearing. So SLUP 4 of 2020 will not be heard today. SLUP 8 of 2020, 1420 Lockhart Holdings, LLC. This case was continued by the Planning Commission until the October 6, 2020 Planning Commission zoning hearing. So SLUP 8 of 2020 will not be heard today. SLUP 9 of 2020, Christian Crawford. This case was continued by the Planning Commission until the October 6, 2020 Planning Commission zoning hearing. So SLUP 9 of 2020 will not be heard today. ROD 1 of 2020, Atlantic Realty Acquisitions LLC, was continued by the staff until the October 6, 2020 Planning Commission zoning hearing. So ROD 1 of 2020 will not be heard today. Other business item number 38 of 2020, Jupiter Development Incorporated. This case was continued by the staff until the October 20th, 2020 Board of Commissioners zoning hearing. So other business item number 38 of 2020 will not be heard today. Other business item number 50 of 2020, the Edge Preparatory Academy. This case was continued by the staff until the October 2020 Board of Commissioners zoning hearing. So other business item number 50 of 2020 will not be heard today. Other business item number 51 of 2020, James K. Noble Jr. This case was continued by the staff until the October 20th, 2020 Board of Commissioners zoning hearing. So other business item number 51 will not be heard today. Mr. Chairman and Board, there are 3 cases on today's printed agenda which submitted a request or have to be continued at this moment in time. So I'd ask that the board would continue these cases and the board would need to vote on these. First case is rezoning case Z30, Ralph S. Elmsmerry. This case doesn't need to be continued, Mr. Chairman and Board. They do need to do some more work on it. So the staff would ask the board to continue rezoning case Z30.
Hey, Commissioner Cupid? Maybe that's your district, so I can make a motion to that effect?
Is she on mute?
Oh. Commissioner Cupid, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, good. There you go.
So moved as presented.
Okay, do we have a second on that motion?
Second, and a question.
Okay, go ahead, Commissioner Burrow.
Is that continued to October or November?
I believe it's continued until the October 20th hearing date, Commissioner.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other discussion, any other questions? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, please raise your hand. Passes 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you. Next case is rezoning case Z50 of 2020, Meritage Homes of Georgia. This case does need to be continued, Mr. Chairman and Board, so we'd ask the board to continue this case until your October 20th, 2020 Board of Commissioners zoning hearing.
All right, Commissioner Cupid, that's also in your district?
Yes, so moved.
Okay, I have a motion. I have a second.
Second.
Second, any discussion? Call the question. All in favor, please raise your hand. Passes 5-0. Thank you.
And Mr. Chairman and Board, the last one I have on my list that needs to be continued is other business item number 47, Cooling Unlimited LLC. We did try to get in touch with with the applicant, Mr. Chairman and Board, and the representative, but we have not heard back. We haven't had the proof of mailing in yet. So the staff would ask you to continue this case until your October 20th zoning hearing date.
Okay, Commissioner Burrow?
Motion to continue.
We have a second? We have a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. Please raise your hand. Passes 5-0. Thank you.
Okay. And before we begin the hearing, I do have a few more announcements to make. I would ask the people in today's audience, if you have a cell phone, please turn the volume on mute. The phone ringing doesn't interfere with the broadcast and presentation. And any person wishing to speak before the Board of Commissioners must file a campaign contribution disclosure statement. If within 2 years immediately preceding the filing of a rezoning application, a campaign contribution totaling $250 more was made to a current member of the Board of Commissioners. And additional information about this requirement is located in the hearing room on the table. And I want to remind applicants, opposition, or any interested party that information is due to this board the Wednesday prior to this hearing day. Any information submitted after the Wednesday due date may or may not be considered by the board at their discretion. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'm ready to start the consent agenda.
Okay, John, it's all yours.
Okay, thank you. So they're okay? Okay. All right. Cobb County Board of Commissioners zoning hearing consent agenda for September 15th, 2020. First case on consent is rezoning case Z62 of 2019, EMBRY Development Company, LLC. The applicant requests rezoning from R20 and NRC to PVC for the purpose of a mixed-use development in land lots 77, 78, 155, and 156 of the 18th District. The property is located on the west side of Mapleton Parkway, southwest side of Old Powder Springs Road, north side of Boggs Road, north side of Patricia Lane, on the north side of Lynn Circle, on the east and west sides of Mellon Drive, on the south side of Sunset Boulevard, which is not open, and on the east and west sides of Gloria Circle, which is not open. Planning Commission recommends approval to the PVZ zoning district, subject to the following conditions. Number 1, site plan received August 31st, 2020. Number 2, letter of agreeable conditions from Mr. Kevin Moore dated August 26, 2020, and August 31st, 2020, not otherwise in conflict with the following changes. A, Section 1, item number 3, in the last sentence, add to the end of the sentence after Mapleton Parkway Design Guidelines, deleting by incorporating brick or painted brick into at least 50% of such front or facing elevation. B, Section 1, item 12, after subject property, add or 180 days of the Board of Commissioners' final zoning decision, whichever comes first. C, Section 3, item 3, change the second sentence to read, to the extent there is a conflict between the attached renderings and the Mapleton Parkway Design Guidelines, the design guidelines shall control. Number 3, all signage visible from Mapleton Parkway shall adhere to the design guidelines. Number 4, the commercial buildings and all the townhomes fronting Mapleton Parkway shall have 3-sided architectural features that adhere to the design guidelines, including but not limited to requirement of 75% brick on the elevations. The rear elevations not visible from Mapleton Parkway are not required to adhere to the design guidelines. Number 5, applicant to install sidewalks on Millam frontage. Number 6, revise Department of Transportation comments and recommendations, specifically recommendation number 11 regarding work to be done on Millam Road. And number 7, staff comments and recommendations not otherwise in conflict. Mr. Chairman and Board, the applicant is present, and there was no one here opposed at 9 a.m. When we took roll. So there's no one opposed to that case.
John, I need to add a stipulation.
Okay.
Yes, just for a district commissioner to have final approval of building and housing architecture and landscape architecture.
Okay, got it, Commissioner.
Thank you.
All right, next case
Hey,
is
John, one
Yes.
second.
Yes, sir.
I noticed that there wasn't a comment, the normal box about the school district, and in the staff comments, they specifically left out their opinion on whether it was a burden on the school system. What's with that?
Well, that was just a comment, Mr. Chairman. It's not a recommendation that this board or the staff of this board can enforce.
Right. I'm just saying that usually you have some sort of box that has the capacity of the school system, and then the specific comments from the staff address the schools whether or not it's a burden on. This time, for this particular case, there was neither one.
That's correct. And if you recall, Mr. Chairman, about a week or two ago, I did forward the board the comments from the school board because that representative was not going to be here at this meeting to participate virtually. So those comments were emailed to the board a week or two ago.
Okay, well, thanks for reminding me that I'm old and forgetful. I appreciate that. Okay, I'm just curious. I had no problem with the something that's presented. I just had a question about it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Next case is rezoning case Z47 of 2020, Alan P. and Christine A. Strong. Request a rezoning from RA5 to R20 for a single-family home in land lot 696 of the 17th district. The property is located on the south side of Lee Road, west of Atlanta Road. The Planning Commission recommends approval to the R20 zoning district, subject to the following conditions. Number 1, site plan review comments and recommendations. Number 2, Water and Sewer Division comments and recommendations. Number 3, Department of Transportation comments and recommendations, with the deletion of recommendation number 1. There was no one here at the call of the case at 9 o'clock, Mr. Chairman, so there is no one opposed to that one, virtually or in person. Next case is rezoning case Z48 of 2020. Bennett Real Estate Holdings LLC requests a rezoning from R20 and NRC to NRC for a child daycare center in land lot 44 of the 18th district. The property is located on the south side of Veterans Memorial Highway, east of Kitchens Road, and on the north side of Wallace Road. The Planning Commission recommends approval, subject to the following conditions. Number 1, site plan received by August 31st, 2020. Number 2, all fencing within 100 feet of Veterans Memorial Highway right-of-way to meet design guidelines. Fences further than 100 feet may be black vinyl coated chain link or meet design guidelines. Fencing that have landscaping between the fence and the right-of-way. Number 3, the landscape buffer to be approved by the county arborist, buffer to be installed by November 1st, 2020. Number 4, the parking lot to be completed within 180 days of the Board of Commissioners' final zoning decision. Number 5, no access to Wallace Road. Number 6, the district commissioner may approve minor modifications except for those that A, increase the overall building square footage, B, cause a reduction in the size of an improved buffer, C, change an access location to a different roadway, D, change that is in conflict with an express stipulation or condition of zoning, or E, requires a variance or violates Cobb County ordinance. And number 7, staff comments and recommendations. Mr. Chairman, Board, there was no one here virtually or in person to oppose this. We took roll at 9 o'clock. And moving into land use permits on the consent agenda. LUP 15 of 2020, Christine Myers requests a temporary land use permit for the purpose of a home hair salon in land lot 547 of the 16th district. The property is located on the north side of Tritt Springs Way, west of Tritt Springs Drive. The Planning Commission recommends approval of LUP 15 for 24 months, subject to the following conditions. Number 1, no more than 5 customers per day. Number 2, no signs. Number 3, no parking in the right-of-way. Number 4, all customers by appointment only. There was no one here to oppose the case either virtually or in person. We took roll at 9 o'clock. And moving on to the next case, LUP 16 of 2020, Devereaux Advanced Behavioral Health, Georgia, requests a temporary land use permit for the purpose of a foster care administrative office in land lot 621 of the 19th district. The property is located on the southeast side of Powder Springs Road, southwest of Tiffany Drive. The Planning Commission recommends approval of LUP 16 for 12 months, subject to the following conditions. Number 1, maximum sign size be 2 feet by 4 feet and be attached to the building. Number 2, maximum of 6 vehicles be parked on the property at any given time. Number 3, at no time shall there be any parking in the right-of-way. Number 4, staff comments and recommendations. Number 5, Department of Transportation comments and recommendations, not otherwise in conflict. And number 6, site plan contained in the zoning analysis. There was no one here opposed when we took roll at 9 o'clock, Mr. Chairman, either virtually or in person. So moving into other business items on the consent agenda. First one is other business item number 42 of 2020, which is to consider a settlement of litigation for 825 Mars Hill LLC regarding rezoning application Z75 of 2018 for property located in land lot 269 of the 20th district. The property is located at the southwest intersection of Hadaway Road and Mars Hill Road and on the northeast side of Due West Road. Staff recommends approval subject to the following conditions. Number 1, letter from Mr. Garvis L. Sams Jr. dated July 14, 2020. Number 2, site plan last revised September 1st, 2020. And number 3, Cobb DOT comments and recommendations. There was no one here opposing this case, Mr. Chairman, either virtually or online when we took roll at 9 o'clock. Next case is other business item number 43 of 2020, which is to consider a stipulation amendment for OHC Wigley LLC regarding rezoning application Z56 of 2017 for property located on the east and west sides of Wigley Road, north of Summit Top Road in land lots 26, 27, 46, and 47 of the 16th district. Staff recommends approval subject to the following conditions. Number 1, fire department comments, and number 2, letter from Mr. Parks F. Huff dated September 9, 2020. That includes the site plan. There was no one here, Mr. Chairman and Board, when we took roll at 9 o'clock, either virtually or in person, to oppose this case. Next case is other business item number 48 of 2020, which is to consider
Excuse me, can we go back? I have some comments to make on OB 53.
Yes, ma'am.
I mean 43. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. Okay, when this case was zoned in August of 2018, when it was approved, the issue before us today is to add, or is to replace 3-car garages with 2-car garages on 18 specific lots. And if you look at Mr. Parks Huff's letter dated 8/2018, number 12 states that the realigned Wigley Road will connect to the Bessetti property as depicted in the site plan. So on the approved site plan, the road stops about 100 feet from the property line, and it has since been dedicated as county right-of-way. However, the applicant will have to connect to the property line as stated in the STIP letter. And any other arrangements worked out with the applicant and the Bessettis will have to come back to the board for approval.
Okay,
And with those, with that submitted, I'll approve.
okay, thank you.
Okay. Moving on to the next item is other business item number 48, 2020, which is to consider a reduction of minimum public road frontage for Mr. Joseph Neal Copeland from 75 feet to 0 feet for property located on the western side of Old Lost Mountain Road off of private easement in land lot 432 of the 19th district. Staff recommends approval subject to the following conditions. Number 1, stormwater management comments, and number 2, water and sewer comments. There was no one here opposed to this case, either virtually or in person, Mr. Chairman and Board, when we took roll at 9 o'clock. Item number 49 of 2020 is to consider a stipulation amendment for Beach Haven Trail Storage LLC regarding rezoning application Z67 of 2016 and SLUP 9 of 2016 for property located on the west side of Beach Haven Trail, south of Winchester Trail, and on the east side of I-285 in land lots 764 and 765 of the 17th district. Staff recommends approval subject to the following conditions. Number 1, sidewalk requirements are deleted, and number 2, all previous stipulations not in conflict with this amendment to remain in effect. There was no one here either virtually or in person to oppose this case, Mr. Chairman. And we took roll at 9
Tom,
o'clock.
I want to add a stipulation.
Okay.
I believe that you are in receipt of a letter from the applicant's representative indicating that they were going to pay for the damage done to the sign at the HOA entrance.
Okay.
Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I'd like to add stipulation that the applicant agrees to pay for the repair of the damaged sign from the installation of the sidewalks across the street, and
Okay.
reference the letter that you received.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Ott. Okay, next item is other business item number 52 of 2020, which is consider a site plan and stipulation amendment for Mountain Prize Incorporated regarding rezoning application Z89 of 2006 for property located at the southeast intersection of US Highway 41, Cobb Parkway, and State Highway 92, also known as Dallas-Ackworth Highway, in land lots 40 and 41 of the 20th district. Staff recommends approval subject to the following conditions. Number 1, Cobb DOT comments with the notation that Ackworth Due West Road is replaced with Ackworth Dallas Highway, also known as State Route 92. Number 2, stipulation 13 is revised to delete the berm requirement, but have one of the following 3 items: either 1, fencing, 2, landscaping, or 3, a 25-foot undisturbed buffer. And number 3, all previous stipulations not in conflict with this amendment to remain in effect. There was no one here either virtually or in person to oppose this case when we took roll at 9 o'clock, Mr. Chairman and Board. And I believe Commissioner Gambrill wants to alter one of the conditions.
All right, Commissioner Gambrill?
Yes, thank you, John. On the amendment slip number 2, I'd like to change the language to read as follows. The southern property line adjacent to land lot 74 shall have a 35-foot undisturbed buffer. Along the western property line adjacent to R30 zone property, there shall be a 35-foot undisturbed buffer. If the buffer has to be disturbed, it shall be replaced with a replanted buffer and/or privacy fence with final approval by the district commissioner. If the adjacent property is rezoned commercially, the buffer requirement shall cease. and this was agreed to by the applicant.
Okay, got it.
Thank you.
John, I have one other question. One of the requests was to delete requirement for related to the Lake Allatoona Preservation Authority.
Correct.
But does that still stay in place, that requirement?
No, that goes away if the board approves this, this item, Mr. Chairman.
And so why are we deleting that?
Because that authority no longer really exists, Mr. Chairman. It's kind of dissolved itself. So there is no one there to send information to.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you. And last thing on consent is other business item number 53 of 2020, which is consider a site plan and stipulation amendment for Smith Douglas Homes regarding rezoning application Z66 of 2019 for property located at the southeast intersection of Canton Road and Kensington Drive and land lot 299 of the 16th District. Staff recommends approval, subject to the following conditions. Number 1, letter from Mr. Garvis L. Sams Jr. dated July 20, 2020. Number 2, site plans contained in the other business packet with the District Commissioner approving minor modifications. And number 3, all previous stipulations not in conflict with this amendment to remain in effect. There was no one here opposed either virtually or in person, Mr. Chairman and Board, so that would complete the consent agenda.
And I have a comment on OB 53, please.
Okay.
I'd just like to add that sidewalks on the frontage of Canton Road will be required, and we will allow a fee in lieu of on Kensington frontage.
Got it.
Okay. All right, with that, I now make a motion that we approve the consent agenda as revised.
Second.
Have a second, any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the motion in favor, please raise your hand. I see 4 hands, passes 5-0, thank you. All right, I think we're on to Z23 right now.
Yes, sir. Rezoning case Z23 of 2020, Park Lane Capital 2 LLC, request a rezoning from RM12 and R20 to GC for the purpose of a convenience store fuel sales and land lots 421 and 444 of the 17th District. The property is located at the northwest corner of Atlanta Road and Daniel Drive. Mr. Chairman and Board, this is an unusual case because the board did not carry a motion 2 months ago to approve the request. So we would need someone from the board to make a substitute motion on this case.
Okay, my understanding is the motion to delete was not approved, so we have to vote on the original zoning, is that correct? As proposed?
Yes, and a board member does have to make a substitute motion based on the plan that we saw 2 months ago.
Okay, I just want to make sure I'm clear about this. There was a motion made to delete the original request. So that motion failed. So why is it we wouldn't just be voting on the original zoning application?
Because that's what's before us, it's still pending.
Exactly, right. Yeah, I think we're all saying the
I'm
same.
prepared to make a motion, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, go ahead, Commissioner Burrow.
I make a motion to deny Z23.
Okay, we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. All right, any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, please raise your hand. Passes 5-0. Okay, thank you. All right, John, you have a precedent to set now with your next case in the time limit.
Okay. Hey, can you count these up real quick and let me know how many you're on here? No,
I think the next one is Z40, right?
Just count them up real quick for the onlines. All right, Mr. Chairman. Next case is rezoning case Z40 of 2020, Brooks Chadwick Capital LLC. I request rezoning from R20 and R30 to R15 for a single-family residential subdivision in land lots 183, 184, 185, 248, and 249 of the 16th District. The property is located on the east and west sides of Wesley Chapel Road, south of Sandy Plains Road, and on the southern terminus of Foxwood Court, and at the eastern terminus of Hanover Court. The applicant and representative are present, Mr. Chairman. There are 16 here virtually opposed to the case. Are there any here in person? And there are none here. Well, I think there are a few here. Can you check real quick? So there are 16 people here virtually opposing the case, Mr. Chairman, Board. And all of them do not wish to speak? Okay. All right. And we're getting the number of people who are in person, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Okay, 2 would like to speak? Okay. How about Z40? Okay, Mr. Chairman, Board, we do have 3 people here opposed in person to Z40. We have 16 online, and there are 2 of the 16 online who wish to speak. So we would ask the board to alternate between in-person and online when it comes time for the opposition. At this point, I'm going to hand it over to the applicant, Mr. Chairman, Board.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Board, there are 8 people here in person who wish to oppose the case. So when we call for opposition, we just like to alternate between the online and the in-person people.
All right, thank you. So I think we're waiting for the applicant to present their case first.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we're just waiting as they're making sure people are coming in and getting settled. They won't, it's not going to distract me. Thank you, though, for asking. Mr. Chairman, if you and the board are ready, they're settled in here, and we can go whenever you're ready to hear.
Okay, we're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. I'm Kevin Moore. I'm here on behalf of the applicant, Brooks Chadwick Capital, and the owners in this application for rezoning. This property is just over 49 acres. It's located on Wesley Chapel Road. Currently, it's zoned to the R30 and R20 zoning categories, and we're seeking rezoning to the R15 category for a subdivision for a maximum of 81 homes. What you see on the screen in front of you, in the center of that screen, is the property. You see the property is essentially bisected by Wesley Chapel Road. That's the road that you see winding through the middle of your screen. It runs to the north where it intersects with Showerford Road at the top of your screen there. What you can see by this surrounding area is that the property is predominantly surrounded by R15 subdivisions. If you go through Wesley Chapel Road and go down that road, since the 70s, any type of residential development that has occurred, and there have been numerous residential subdivisions that have developed over that time period along Wesley Chapel Road, have each been developed as R15 and rezoned from R30 and R20 categories to the R15 category for residential development. Brooks Chadwick in this application is seeking simply to do the same, and that is rezone this tract located on both sides of Wesley Chapel Road to the R15 zoning category, just as its neighbors have been done in the prior instances of subdivisions. Going to the next slide, One of the things we think is very important, and I think it highlights what I just stated, is the surrounding area along Wesley Chapel Road. We just put together a sample summary chart of the densities of the surrounding R15 subdivisions. Each of the subdivisions we have listed on this chart is zoned R15 and is off of Wesley Chapel. Highlands at Wesley Chapel, both east and west sections, are R15, were rezoned in 2003 and 4 to R15 at densities from 1.64 to 2.02 units per acre. Mabry Grove is just over 2 units per acre. Spring Mill subdivision, which is located immediately adjacent to our south, also zoned to the R15 category, is at 1.88 units per acre. Now you have Beacon Hill, Village at North Highlands, Creekside Bluffs. All of those are R15 subdivisions along Wesley Chapel, ranging from 1.6 to 1.8 units per acre. Finally, Lock Highland. It was developed in numerous sections and phases and units. The 3 units and sections that are most adjacent to us, all of them zoned R15, range in densities from 1.7 to 1.9 and 2.1 units per acre. These are the surrounding R15 subdivisions to this property, leaving an average density of 1.84 units per acre. What we are proposing would be the next slide, is a maximum of 81 homes at a net density of 1.72 units per acre. So that you can see what we are proposing and what Brooks Chadwick Capital is proposing is on the low end of the range of densities of R15 subdivisions that surround this property at 1.72 units per acre. As even further perspective, as you may know, the average yield for an R20 subdivision is 1.75 units per acre. So what you can see is even though we are seeking zoning to R15, it is at a density comparable to R20 subdivisions, which is usually 1.75. Going to our site plan, I want to go through a number of issues and discussions with you and items on this site plan in a lot more detail. Here you can see our proposed layout for the 2 tracks bisected by Wesley Chapel Road in the middle, which has proposed subdivision on the left and right as R15 at a total number of 81 homes. Importantly, what we are proposing with this R15 subdivision is we are not proposing any variances. We're not requesting variances from the R15 zoning ordinance, not requesting variances for lot size, not requesting variances within the code for lot widths or any other variances. The only thing we are seeking, which is presumptively technically a variance, but that is we are requesting as part of our stipulations and conditions that the rear setback for R15, which is 30 feet by code, we're requesting that be increased, the rear setback from 30 feet to 40 feet, and a corresponding reduction of the front setback by 10 feet as well. What that enables us to do is you can see this layout, this property has a number of exterior lots. Those are lots that are adjacent to existing neighborhoods, existing R15 neighborhoods and lots. And what that does is allow us to make sure we're pulling those homes away from our neighbors and away from existing residential subdivisions and homes by increasing that rear setback. And even in instances where we can, we're requesting that we can move it even further where warranted. And again, that is an effort to increase setbacks against our adjacent neighbors, even though, and therefore increase the minimums provided by code in that instance. In addition, we have had extensive discussions with area HOA and residents, and specifically with the Highlands at Wesley Chapel subdivision. If you're looking at your site plan on the right-hand side, on the north side or the upper side of that is Highlands at Wesley Chapel East. On the left-hand side of your screen on that site plan, to the southerly boundary or below our tract, as we show here, is Highlands at Wesley Chapel West. That's a subdivision of Highlands at Wesley Chapel. We've had extensive discussions with them. You've received an email from their president, Mr. Garber, expressing their support, conditioned on the zoning stipulations that we have included in our letter. And they are detailed and are provided and worked through with them. But in general, what we have agreed to do with them is to have additional landscaping, berms, and buffers as it relates to Highlands at Wesley Chapel, as well as some other measures that relate to traffic calming. And that are things that we have agreed with them and provided in detail in the stipulation letter as we worked out with them to obtain their support and which we were happy to do so and glad that that could occur. But those are in our stipulation letter and goes to our most immediate neighbors, the Highlands at Wesley Chapel subdivision. As you can see with this site plan, there are also a number of other issues that have been discussed, and I want to go into a little bit of detail with that based on our discussions with the Lock Highland Homeowners Association, which is to our south, adjacent to us as well, primarily dealing with stormwater issues or concerns that have been raised, and we also discussed these with Highlands at Wesley Chapel. First and foremost, I want to make sure that this board is aware the Planning Commission did make a recommendation that this development be required to meet elevated stormwater controls. We are in agreement with that stipulation and condition as recommended by the Planning Commission. And that is not to simply meet the minimum as required by code for stormwater controls, but those will be elevated for us and for this development, which is different than any other R15 development has been required to do along Wesley Chapel. In addition, we have agreed that all of our stormwater, hydrology, and engineering plans prior to receipt of or issuance of the land disturbance permit and during the plan review process will be shared and provided to Lock Highland Homeowners Association as well as Highlands at Wesley Chapel Homeowners Association so that they can retain the services of their own engineer to have review of those plans and provide input in any comments that they want to make to those plans, just for purposes of protection of stormwater. You can see on this plan the great deal of green area that lies outside of the lots where there are streams. Those, again, we have taken special precautions. Those areas will be common area protected by the Homeowners Association as undisturbed protection of those stream buffers, as opposed to doing what the code allows, which is allow lots to go into the stream buffers and into those streams, which is what occurred in Lock Highland, for example. It has over 40 lots that include lakes, streams, and stream buffers within those lots. We do not. We have provided for nominal buffer averaging in a couple of key locations, but that is not about lot count or number of lots. It's about lot quality, and it's about avoiding walls. If we do not have buffer averaging in those limited nominal locations, we ended up having to build walls, which we don't believe would be necessary, especially given the nominal amount of buffer averaging that we're requesting here. Again, it's not about protection of stormwater management concerns. We have done that and will continue to do that. Cobb County is excellent at that, and we are providing for elevated controls, placing the vast over 90% of the majority of the streams and required buffers and common space to be permanently protected by HOA ownership and undisturbed in perpetuity. None of that has been done or required of any of the surrounding subdivisions that are also zoned R15. At the end of the day, what we believe this is about is the property rights of this particular owner who's owned it for generations. And as Wesley Chapel is developed as R15, they too simply want to develop this property as R15. We've agreed to elevated requirements, agreed to additional requirements, additional burdens on this developer by Brooks Chadwick that they've agreed to that weren't required of any of the other R15 subdivisions that have been developed along Wesley Chapel. But we've done so out of the sensitivity to our neighbors and to the issues that have been raised. Again, we believe this is an excellent rezoning. It's meant to be entirely consistent and compatible with the area, and we respectfully request your approval. Thank you.
Opposition.
Okay.
So how much you talk?
Thank you for having us here today to discuss the application for Z40. My name is Josh Garber, and I am the president of the Highlands of Wesley Chapel HOA. Since July, we've been working diligently to communicate our neighborhood concerns to the developer, Brooks Chadwick, and work out an amicable resolution which we believe fairly addresses our primary concerns with the proposed development, Willis Woods. These concerns are outlined in our impact statement that was filed with the county on July 29th and in the various emails sent in by residents. They are also documented in the Planning Commission meeting held September 1st, 2020. We have worked diligently with the developer to resolve the concerns raised by our neighborhood. Namely, in the revised stipulation letter submitted by Kevin Moore on behalf of the developer dated September 9th, 2020, the developer has provided the following stipulations to address our neighborhood concerns. Stipulations 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, and 29. These stipulations are being provided to address the buffer concerns raised by our neighborhood. Without these stipulations, as demonstrated in our impact statement and associated affidavits, our neighborhood home values will be negatively impacted as much by 15%, particularly as we have a very unique situation in that Sweat Creek Run is a single load street. So the back of the proposed Willis Woods homes will face the front of our homes, amenities, and neighborhood entrance. Stipulation 23. This stipulation helps to address the traffic and safety concerns that specifically impact our neighborhood, and we ask that the county help us implement both an oncoming flashing light for our Phase 1 entrance and the do not block box for our Phase 2 entrance. The flashing light will help our neighbors who already cannot see around the blind curve where the proposed entrance of Willis Woods will be located, and the do not block box will help our neighbors be able to get in and out of our neighborhood during the peak morning and afternoon elementary school drop-off pickup times. Finally, stipulations 10, 11, and 25. These stipulations help to address the watershed and runoff concerns that may impact our properties along Sweat Creek. We believe that these stipulations address the primary concerns raised by our neighborhood based on the proposed rezoning request. We therefore ask that the Board of Commissioners approve these stipulations as written and agreed upon by the developer and the Highlands of Wesley Chapel HOA and make them part of the final zoning approval conditions. With these stipulations being made part of the zoning approval conditions, we will withdraw our opposition. Again, thank you for your time and consideration for giving us the opportunity to work through the issues raised in our impact statement in an amicable way with our developer. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Opposition speaker is first, Mr. Alan Brown.
Okay. So how much time is left for those from the applicant side, John?
May I have a call? Alan Brown is representing Rock Island as I am.
John, I hear a voice, but I don't see a face here.
Do you want to hear from someone virtually, Mr. Chairman, or from someone in person right now?
How much time is left for those from the applicant side?
On the applicant side or the opposition side?
The applicant side. Are we done with the applicant's proposal and support?
That was almost 3 minutes on.
All right, so is there anybody else left there in support?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, okay. No, just a comment, no questions.
John?
Mr. Chairman, the applicant took up all their time, so the only people left here in the room are the people that are opposed to the case.
Okay, so we have both the applicants have presented their case with those who support it, and their time limit is up, correct?
Correct.
Okay, now let's listen to those who oppose. What we'll do is we'll start like you suggested. Those that are there will be the first speaker, and then we'll go virtual for the next speaker. Those who are there for the third speaker. Those who are in opposition, the virtual will be the number 4, okay?
Mr. Chairman, that person who just spoke was speaking in the opposition's time. How much time do they use, Bill?
Almost 3 minutes.
They use 3 minutes, so we're on the opposition's time right now. We have 7 minutes left, Mr. Chairman.
I thought, my understanding, he was there in support of the application. That's what it sounded like to me.
He was in support of the application if they got certain conditions, Mr. Chairman, but he was speaking in the opposition's time.
I don't think that's fair to the opposition to do that. So how much time did we use entirely?
We used 10 minutes for the applicant, and we used 3 minutes already for the opposition. So if the board wants to give more time, that's fine.
So let's do 13 minutes for those who are opposed, all right?
Okay, 13 minutes?
Right.
All right.
So we will have 10 minutes because I have no problem with that.
You got 13 minutes. Debbie, you want to speak?
Yes, that's it.
So
I'll be doing that. So, thank you.
All right.
There's other people to speak also.
I know, but they withdrew their opposition at the planning commission, so. I appreciate it.
It has not been.
I have a presentation. We don't want to give that to my judge today.
Is it on thumb drive there?
And I said, so
Okay.
you're safe.
Why don't we hear from virtual first? It's going to take a while to get that set up. It had to be actually 5 minutes.
Okay. We'll do the virtual first. I'll get this to CP up there.
he is not needed. Sorry. Alan Brown will be the next to speak. Mr. Brown? Mr. Alan Brown in opposition of Z40.
He's unmuted. All right, who's the first speaker, John?
Go ahead, Mr.
We're trying to do a virtual speaker right now, Chair.
Okay, all right.
Mr. Brown, go ahead and speak.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not speaking.
All right, thank you. William Rock.
Good morning. Thank you. I appreciate all your time. I just want to say a few things. First of all, this is not 1970. This is 2020. And I know that there's a lot of R15 around there, but these creeks and places are very swollen. I appreciate the work that the builder may be doing, but I can't find any history on this company at all. And although talking to Lock Highland, I don't see them being very cooperative with any other subdivision around. There's an online petition of over almost 1,000 Cobb County constituents who have asked for this not to be rezoned. It's mainly R30 and should stay that way. Harrison Mill is currently overrun. Less than 10 years ago, he spent $287,000 on splash money to replace the culvert crossing in the Raintree Forest subdivision, which is on the south side, just west of this property. There's no real need for the Z15. And with that, I just want to again thank the board for their time. As you can see, we have quite the people that really just don't want this to go. We actually don't be probably done anything with it all, but I'm from a construction family. I understand that it's going to be developed, and I'd like it to be developed, and again, at R30. Thank you for your time. I'd also like to thank County Attorney Rowling for his work as well.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, can the last speaker be identified? I didn't catch your name.
That was William Roth.
Thank
you. Okay, and
Hey, CP, go ahead and put in Debbie's.
there we go.
Okay, it's up.
You can go to the second slide so we can save on time here. Good morning, commissioners. My name is Debbie Fisher. I'm speaking on behalf of the Lock Highland HOA, and we're a little late to the game. I do want to first say that we appreciate Mr. Moore giving us the time yesterday to discuss a few serious concerns, and I'd like to go through the list of stipulations with you that I feel are still outstanding that cause us great concern. So I'll begin with the newest site plan, notes 3 and 6, and I reference Cobb County Code 50-32 and code sections 50-57. Per the code requirements in R15, there are undisturbed buffers of 50 feet. We are asking on the abutting property to Lock Highland a 40-foot undisturbed buffer in perpetuity that falls within the county's 50-foot undisturbed buffer. The following lots are the ones that we are requesting. They are inclusive of other neighborhoods as well. 47 through 52, 71, 77, and 78. Some of these lots, it appears, have been reduced to accommodate the additional stormwater facility, which I do not believe was on the site plan that you just viewed. There are several where it appears to me where the 33,000 minimum square foot home will penetrate the impervious 75-foot buffer. During construction, we also ask that in perpetuity, there should be no clear cutting in any area that falls within jurisdictional waters, wetlands, stream banks within the 50-foot disturbed buffer zone. We would like to ask that no trees are removed through the entire location within the 75-foot zone, with the exception of the code section 50.47. And I would like a ruling. Yesterday, Mr. Moore was under the impression that once one of those exceptions are penetrated, which in this case would be a stream and a road, that those buffers are no longer buffers. I would like a ruling on that, John, if possible. We also are asking that the undisturbed buffers, protections for waterway, floodplains, and wetlands be included in the governing documents. Stipulation number 2, we want to contest the accuracy of the calculation on the density. It indeed is not 1.75. It is at 7.5. You did change it, didn't you, on your presentation? Yes. Thank you. Minus that last comment. Even so, that the density has been corrected, we would like to ask that lots 51 and 55 be eliminated. Both of those lots are completely, almost covered up, I'm guessing about 70% with the buffer zone. I do not see how a structure can be built on either one of those lots that is 3,000 square feet. Lock Highland also opposes the language in stipulation number 10. We are asking for a seat at the table after we have an opportunity to review the hydrology report with our civil engineer. Mr. Moore did concede to having us added to a notification anytime that they apply for a land disturbance permit, but we would ask that we go one step further. And if it can't be resolved at site plan review, we would ask to come before the board. Lastly, but not least, there is one gaping hole on the silt studies. He has conceded to give us additional silt studies because of the duration of the construction. However, there is no agreement currently for remediation of any impact to our lakes. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. I'd like to go over real quickly with you the map, just so you understand what we're asking for and where these are. What you were looking at in Mr. Moore's presentation did not show you all these buffers, nor the additional stormwater facility they graciously added. I don't believe that was out of the goodness of their heart. I believe it's because they know there is going to be a runoff problem. The areas where you see the squiggly lines and the streams are the areas we are hyper concerned about. I also want to point out the lots that we're asking for a protected buffer in perpetuity. That is accented with number 1. Number 3 are the lots we want removed. And number 2 is the area we want protected from clear cutting. Next slide, please. You wonder why we're asking for these things at this late date. Well, here's why. This is a view from property owners in Lock Highland. It is a heavily wooded property that we're looking at, and this is part of the development. You can also see the rough terrain back there, which already does have erosion, and that's with a full tree canopy. Next slide, please. And I want you to consider these facts when you're considering our requests. For every 100 drops of rain, 95 drops with impervious surface become runoff. For every 100 drops with pervious surface, only 15, and that is not including a tree canopy. Next slide, please. To further prove what I'm talking about, a tree actually intercepts 13% of that rain that never becomes runoff. These trees stabilize the ground, preventing severe erosions. It also slows the rate of runoff when it's extended. And anyone that knows anything about stormwater knows there's 3 issues that cause severe erosion, cause damage. That's velocity, volume, and duration. And when those trees are gone, all 3 of those will impact our neighborhood very negatively. Next slide. This is the shot of Spring Mill behind us. This is a normal average 1-inch rain. The stream that you see coming off this property is actually totally missing their retention center and pours into our creek beds. That also, this creek is what abuts the development. Next slide. This is an example that was in the rain that we had last month. You see the pond that is formed on the top of that bank? That all comes into Lock Highland Lakes, and with it comes dirt, silt, and debris. Next slide, please. This is what happened after Spring Mill was built. This is the erosion on this stream bank that used to be basically a dry stream bed. We have lost trees, the property owners have lost parts of their yard, and this is only going to be exacerbated. Next slide, please. This is a silt island. This is eventually where all this ends up. We dredge these silt ponds every 2 years to the cost of about $60,000 per 5 silt ponds. Please, next slide. What we're asking for on clarification of what we're being told. Number 1, it was confirmed yesterday, there are wetlands involved in this development. They need to be clearly marked on the site plan. We also need to confirm, Mr. Peterson, when a stream or a road is penetrated, does that eliminate buffers? That's what we were told yesterday. I contest that fact. Confirm that our 15 side setback is actually indeed larger than 5 feet. In our opinion, that is a variance. We also do not know how many parking places, which is all impervious surface or any structure that is going into that area that should be completely protected based on all of the drainage that will come off that area into our lake. We also want to confirm that no trees can be clear-cutted. Next slide. This is a list for the record of what Mr. Moore agreed to yesterday. And again, we thank him for working with us, but we also need more time to work some more. So next slide, please. We believe in Lock Highland that our requests are prudent in protecting our lakes, our homeowners, and our HOA's financial interest. Just for the record, Lock Highland in the last 11 years has spent $1.5 million just dredging our lakes. That doesn't include dam maintenance or anything outside of dredging our lakes. We are the recipient of downstream runoff for 2,400 acres from Sweat Mountain into our lakes. We ask you today to give us more time. We don't believe, and a lot of that I'll place the blame for coming late to the table, but we ask you to continue this because this is a financial impact on the developer for a delay, but the financial impact to Lock Highland is forever. I think they can take 1 month, and we are asking you to continue this until we can come to some agreements on how we protect the lake. Our stipulations are reasonable. If you won't give us a continuance, we ask that you agree to our stipulations. There is nothing that is out of bounds that we've asked for. We totally don't oppose an R15, but we do oppose anything that is going to have a negative impact on our lake, and there's still a lot of questions. For that, I thank you, and I concede my time.
Thank you, ma'am.
We got 20 seconds. You don't want to speak for 20 seconds. And Mr. Chairman and Board, that completes the people who wanted to speak virtually and in person, Mr. Chairman. So we're done with the opposition time.
Okay, thank you. All right, Commissioner Ott?
Mr. Chairman, I believe Commissioner Burrell, I mean, this is one of those unique cases which I don't, in all my years of zoning, haven't ever had, where you have a development that crosses both two commission districts. And so Commissioner Burrell and I have talked about it, and she's going to lead us off. So, Commissioner Burrell.
Commissioner Burrell, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, this is quite the unusual zoning with stretching over both sides of Wesley Chapel and Districts 2 and 3. You can see from the presentation, first of all, that the density initially was an issue, but as you can see, it does fit right in line with the surrounding properties that are zoned R15 as well. I'd like to thank our planning commissioners, especially Tony Wainwright and Judy Williams, for working with the neighborhoods and the developer in getting to this point. We did hold it for a month so that they could work out some additional things. I also want to make sure from the developer that Mr. Garber's Highlands of Wesley Chapel, that was his email with conditions that were approved at Planning Commission recommendations, that they are still in place to assure him. I thought he was speaking in support too, but as long as those stipulations that he referenced are still in place. So I'd like to make sure that's correct. And then also yesterday on September 14th, Amy Diaz sent us some additional DOT comments and recommendations, and I would like to submit those for the record. And I will make sure that the clerk gets those for the record. That's really all I was going to speak to. I think Commissioner Ott is going to address the impervious surface and drainage and stream buffer area. That is where his side is the Lock Harlan side that abuts this property. So I just like to thank everybody for working together and commenting on everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Ott?
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. First thing I want to start off on, and as Commissioner Burrell said, a lot of the stormwater and drainage issues that we heard about this morning and have read in emails are indeed on the eastern side of Wesley Chapel in the area that's part of District 2. One of the things I think it's important to point out is the county has been working with Lock Harlan as long as I've had that area in District 2 and even prior to that when it was under District 3 with Commissioner Burrell. And the county has worked with them. Unfortunately, past zoning practices created an environment that has allowed disruptions to the lake. You know, for example, there's like almost 40 lots in Lock Harlan that are in the buffers that we kind of talked about today. And a lot of these stream buffers and things have been put in place by the state and the county to try to address some of these drainage issues. Just kind of a recap, you know, there's three numbers that keep getting thrown around: 25, 50, 75. And the 25-foot stream buffer is a state number, which basically it's a set number that you cannot go into. And when you're looking at the site plan, that's the first line closest to the stream on each side. The next one is the 50-foot, which is the one that basically, it says undisturbed, but the county code, at least for the remainder of this year, does allow buffer averaging. And that's very similar to when we talk about moving setbacks on a lot where somebody wants to decrease the setback, say in the front, with an increase in the rear. And so the buffer averaging simply says that if you go into that 50, not to the 25, you have to come up with greater buffering somewhere else on the stream. And then there's the 75 impervious line, and that is basically you cannot build past the 75-foot line with anything impervious. And obviously it's to address some of the issues that Ms. Fisher brought up about drainage. And all this discussion, I got a great education from Dave Braden yesterday when we talked about all this. And so on the buffer averaging, stormwater is well aware of what the rules are and how it's supposed to work. And when Dave and I talked yesterday about some of the buffer averaging requests, there's been a lot of discussion about the detention pond and how it's shown on the drawing. I would just remind the board that the detention pond on the site plan that we see is not engineered. It has not been approved by Stormwater Management, Dave Braden and his team. And so we have to keep in mind that just because something shows into those lines there, Dave has every intention of making sure that the applicant follows the county rules. And so the final engineering plan will still have to be approved by Stormwater Management, and it will not violate the county rules or the state rules relative to that. I think it's really important, and Commissioner Burrell mentioned it, the adjoining HOA, which in this, once again, unique zoning case, happens to be adjoining to both parts on both sides of Wesley Chapel, they're in support. And the applicant in his stipulation letter has addressed all of their concerns, as we heard from the HOA president. And I think that's important because this board always works to consider the adjoining properties' concerns. And so I think that's important to see that they are on board. There was some question about the moving the lots around, and at the discretion of the applicant, I plan on addressing that in a motion. And then as Commissioner Burrell mentioned, we have a revised DOT comments, which we're going to address in the motion also. And so, Mr. Chairman, if there are no more comments prior to a motion, I'll make a motion. Commissioner Burrell and I have talked about it, so I'll just read through the motion if you're ready.
Yeah, go ahead and make the motion, and then we'll have discussion afterwards, all right?
Okay, so I'll make a motion to approve the Z40 with the following conditions. Subject to the stipulation letter from Kevin Moore dated September 9th, 2020, with the site plan from Kevin Moore dated September 8th, 2020, with the following amendments. Item number 20, add that the final site plan approval by the respective district commissioner. Item number 23. What's that?
Plural.
Well, I see, respective district commissioner.
Sure.
So,
Okay.
all right, number 23, and this addresses the some of the traffic improvements that, as we heard from the neighboring HOA, that they wanted at least put in here to notify the county that they would like to do this. The applicant has agreed to pay for the painting of the do not block the box. So add to item number 23 that the applicant agrees to pay for printing of do not block the box if warranted and approved by Cobb DOT. Number 12, going to add to the end of number 12, and approved by Stormwater Management. This deals with moving some of the lots. Specifically, it talks about the disturbed buffer areas. The DOT revised comments yesterday from Amy Diaz, with the exception that number 4 is changed to read subject to District 2 Commissioner approval. And the reason it's worded that way instead of the respective is that item number 4 totally deals with traffic concerns on the eastern side of the development, which is all in District 2. Also in the revised DOT comments, strike number 10, or strike her number 5, because that is listed as an agreement with the HOA. The HOA, in the discussion with the applicant, knows that the applicant is not going to pay for that. Number 9, add to number 9, this deals with the pre and post study discussions. Number 9 will have added that Stormwater Management will determine mediation if post sedimentation study shows negative impacts to the lake. It's standard that stormwater management would do this, but since it was an issue that came up with the opposition, I wanted to address it. All planning commission comments and recommendations not otherwise in conflict with this motion. All staff comments and recommendations not otherwise in conflict with this motion, and no variances on the impervious surface requirements in the county code. So, Mr. Chairman, that would be the motion.
Okay, do you have a second?
Second.
Second. Our discussion, commissioners. Commissioner Gamble.
Yes, Commissioner Ott, just to verify, I know there were concerns on lots 51 and 55 as far as if they are buildable. Are you looking to have that addressed in stormwater comments?
When I talked to Dave Braden, as when he explained to me how the buffer averaging worked, one of the stipulations in the stipulation letter is the square footage of the house. And then we have the requirements of the impervious to 75 feet. And so the buildability of the lot will be determined by stormwater, because the issue at hand is a buffer averaging, or the having to maintain the stream buffers. And so I don't want to eliminate the lot, because there may be something that they can work out with Dave, that they can have the lot. It may be that the lot goes away. But I think because this is a stormwater issue, we need to kind of leave it to Dave's expertise.
And if I may comment on that too, in your motion, you did say that they had to meet all the county standards on impervious, and all the lots, each lot can only be a maximum of 35%. So.
Right.
Okay. All right, any other comments from the commissioners? I have one question, Commissioner Ott, or I think that's on your side of the road. Actually, it's on Commissioner Burrell's side of the road. There's a request from Ms. Fisher about inside the 50-foot buffer that's protected, that there be no clear cutting in there. Is that something that's already part of the county code, or is that something we can add to assure her to help mitigate the erosion concerns she has?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I believe that when, and this is where it gets confusing, because we have, the county code talks about buffers for subdivision versus commercial and vice versa, but the buffers we're talking about here are the stormwater buffers, the stream buffers, the 25-foot state, the 50-foot undisturbed buffer. Because of the granting of authority in the motion for buffer averaging, in most places, yes, the 50-foot is going to remain undisturbed. But if in Dave's determination that they can meet the buffer averaging requirements that the county allows, then there may be certain lots where that 50-foot is disturbed. But the 50-foot undisturbed that's being referenced here is basically related to the stream buffers. And if you look at the western side of the development, there's only a single stream that goes through there, and none of the lots actually touch any of the buffer lines. All the buffer averaging and any going into the 50-foot would be on the eastern side.
Yeah, I agree. I was when she was making her comments, she very specifically noted that area below the stormwater retention pond, I believe. And I think that was the area that she wanted to be protected. And given the circumstances involving Lock Highland, it seems like a reasonable request, because, as you said, there's probably no intention to get inside that area. But nonetheless, I think that if we could address that specifically, it would give assurances to Lock Highland that we hear what they're saying about the erosion issue.
Well, like I said, at least on the current plan, and we have to keep in mind that stormwater management, the drawings on the plans do not represent necessarily where they will end up. They have to be engineered and approved by Dave and his crew. A lot of the issues are really on the eastern side. And I think that because this is really, in the fact that it's unique in that it's a lot of stormwater issues, Dave is well aware of what we've been dealing with down in Lock Highland. And I really would like to leave it to the experts, Dave and his group. I would like to give them as much leeway as possible to do what's necessary to protect the stream and then downstream.
Yeah, I hear you. But the trouble is as you well know, the state of Georgia has a good record of taking our best people. So if Dave leaves tomorrow, okay, there will be that history that he knows about. That's why I'm very concerned about that particular section. But I
mean, then maybe what we do is on any of the and I would have to go back through the STIP letter, but in case Dave leaves, we just might have to pay him more. You didn't hear that, Dave. But maybe what we do then is, Mr. Chairman, is add to the any stipulation, and I would ask the clerk to indulge me here and help go through the letter. But in any of the stipulations in the stipulation letter from Mr. Moore that reference final approval by stormwater management, that we include the district commissioners sign off.
Okay, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
And
all right. So
we also still have Bill Higgins part-time, and
that's true.
He knows everything about when Lock Highland was in District 3. He knows Cochrane Lake, Lock Highland. He knows all that stuff. He's a wealth of knowledge for stormwater management.
All right, so Mr. Chairman, I'll amend the motion to add, and without trying to search through the STIP letter, ask the clerk that any place, any stipulation that gives final approval to stormwater management, that we add a line with concurrence by the district commissioner.
Okay, I'm fine with that. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay. All right.
So with that, hearing no other discussion, I'll call the question. All in favor, please raise your hand. Passes 5-0. Thank you very much, commissioners. All right, let's see here. We're on to Z40.
That was Z40.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, Z42. There you go.
Commissioner Board, is Commissioner Cupid still online?
Is she still here? Yes.
I'm still online, John. Can you hear me?
Did you want to hear your other business case first? Did you want to hear?
Yeah, I have a hard fast call. I need to take in 3 minutes. So I will probably not be present for this next case, and hopefully we'll return before my case is called.
Because I'm going to guess the Cumberland Mall case can go pretty quick.
Okay.
Commissioner, this I'll do through Commissioner Cupid. Let's hear the Cumberland Mall case, all right?
Yeah.
And then we'll adjourn, we'll take a recess until 11 o'clock.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Rezoning case Z42 of 2020, Cumberland Mall LLC, request rezoning from PSC, RRC, then CRC to RRC for the purpose of a mixed-use development in land lots 912, 913, 948, and 949 of the 17th district. The property is located on the south side of Cobb Parkway, the north side of Cumberland Boulevard, and on the west side of Acres Mill Road. Mr. Chairman and Board, the applicant is present, and there is no one here opposing the case either in person or virtually. We went to roll 9 o'clock. Hand it over to Mr. Moore.
Okay, Mr. Moore, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, I'll give you 25 minutes to give your presentation.
It won't take that long. But thank you.
The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Kevin Moore here on behalf of Brookfield Properties in this application for rezoning. And I want to talk about, this first slide essentially gives you a name, Cumberland Mall Proposed Redevelopment. And I think what we're proposing is a project that not so much redevelops all of Cumberland Mall. Cumberland Mall is doing just fine. They're doing well. They continue to do well. They continue to thrive. The issue, though, of course, is as we start to look forward to the next decades, the next 20, 30, and 40 years. When Cumberland Mall was first built, it was our first regional mall in the 1970s, and it has continued to remake itself and do so successfully. But as we approach the next coming decades, this particular area in and around Cumberland Mall has really become what I call Cobb County's own downtown. And that's what it's transformed itself into. And Cumberland Mall needs to be a part of that and included within that, because I think it provides even further economic engine, even further ability to grow Cobb County's own downtown to what it can be over the next decades. So the portion of redevelopment that we're talking about is really reinventing one side of the Cumberland Mall property, not the entire mall itself. And I want to go through that with you, but I think it's just an important distinction. This isn't about Cumberland Mall dying. What it's about is how Cumberland Mall survives and thrives for the next decades to come, as it has over the past decades. So going to the next slide. As we go. First, just for those who it would be shocking if you didn't know where Cumberland Mall was. But as you can see, Cumberland Mall is at the epicenter of our state highway interstate system of 75 and 285 in the Platinum Triangle area. Go to the next slide. What we're proposing now that you get to the site plan is what we've labeled here and identified as the impact area. And that is the area that is proposed for redevelopment. To orient you, on the right-hand side is Acres Mill, and then across the top is Cobb Parkway Highway 41 intersection, and along the bottom is Cumberland Boulevard. And what we're proposing is to take that right-hand side of what is now simply a gigantic asphalt parking field plus a now prior auto-related store, and now transform that area into what we believe this can become for the next decades. Moving to the next slide to give you some more information as we go through it. What you can see now is really how we have intended to lay this out. And I'll go through each of the component parts for you because it's pretty exciting. But first, if you'll see right dead in the middle, it says Dick's Sporting Goods and Golf Galaxy, as well as Planet Fitness and Round One. Those are all new tenants for that end of the mall that are coming in or have come in and will be thriving as part of this. But I wanted to alert that to you. Those are brand new tenants, excellent quality tenants that we're excited about and that will be exciting for this location that'll be coming in immediately as they already have. But starting at the corner, which is at the top right of your screen, which is the intersection of Cobb Parkway and Acres Mill, what we're proposing is a office tower of 222,500 square feet max of 10 stories. It'll have a parking structure, a parking deck that will be built as part of that underneath it to accommodate that parking necessary for the office. In addition, you see brown buildings, which are additional new retail offerings for restaurant and retail. That'll be a part of that concept. And again, as we kind of move around, what you're seeing is a way for all of this to actually interact with each other as component parts, but as one redevelopment as well. Moving to the next section, which is labeled the east section on your plan. East section on your plan is the proposal to introduce the residential to this mixed-use development and make it truly mixed-use and viable for years to come. And that is the multifamily, which is a maximum of 315 units. Again, it'll have structured parking as well as part of that. In addition, it has landscape pedestrian areas that go around the exterior, as well as connectivity to the interior. It also has some ground floor retail areas that again form a real plaza as you go through here and form that area that works together. Moving now to Cumberland Boulevard proper, you see another proposed office tower, maximum of 10 stories, 222,500 square feet over, again, parking with additional retail, again, facing inward. But really importantly here is when we start to get into some things that are, I think, highly interesting and highly beneficial from a county and public standpoint and from a private standpoint about how this can be done together. What we've proposed here is a bus transfer station, and that is a true one. Currently, the bus transfer takes place directly across the street from the area of the mall on Cumberland Boulevard in an area that's just not as well suited for bus transfer as what we are proposing, which will be a true bus transfer with availability for 10 bus bays. Also, as part of that parking structure, there'd be a minimum of 500 parking spaces that would be part of the county's bus transfer station and dedicated for the county and public use as part of that use. And that becomes just critical as far as creating this as a place to be, a place where the bus and bus transfers can occur, where people can come and park, but also once they're here, it gives them a place to go. They have retail, they have restaurants, they have the offerings of Cumberland Mall, and they connect it to each other and with each other so that it works as one as opposed to just simply taking a bus. You've got some place to go. And I think that's vitally important as we move forward into the future. Next, to the left of that, you see the red building with labeled a firehouse. Our fire department has long looked for a location in this area for a new fire station. It is badly needed, and they've looked for it. And what we're doing is providing that location for them here, which is actually perfectly situated and ideal for what they need. And we're providing that as well on this plan as part of this overall redevelopment. Those are how those different pieces work together. Now, what's really interesting in the next slides that we're going to show you is how this all fits together from a visual standpoint. First, there's your current condition, looking across at the intersection of Cobb Parkway and Acres Mill. And you can see just the vast, Cumberland Boulevard and Acres Mill. You can see just the vast acres of open parking fields with the one building and then Cumberland Mall beyond. So going to the next screen. First, we have the multifamily building built at that intersection. You can see the significant green space area there that's along the streetscape, providing for that real setting and pedestrian connectivity. Next slide. Now you see we drop back to Cobb Parkway and looking forward, and that on the left-hand side would be the first of what we're showing you is the office tower built over parking and retail offerings, and you can see how that then fits in at that intersection along with the multifamily. Next slide. Now you can kind of start to see how the whole piece comes together. This is looking at Cumberland Boulevard, and you see the second office tower as well as the bus transfer station on the first level with the parking structure, additional retail, and to the left you'll see the firehouse location as well. And what you're seeing with this is how it all fits together and comes together. Importantly, approval of this is simply approval of the rezoning entitlement. It does not mean, we've been make sure we did that as part of our stipulation letter, that Cobb has committed itself. The county has committed itself to a bus transfer station and a fire station. What it does is through the efforts, the joint efforts of Brookfield Properties and the county, we've been meeting for over a year, we've provided the opportunity for that to occur. If the funding can come together for that and the county decides it wants to do that, it can do that in the future, and it has this location for it. Hopefully that's sooner rather than later. In fact, this bus transfer station project has also recently been put on a list for additional state funding. In addition, the fire station location is something that's long been within the budget for and placed as an item for the fire department, and so it's available for that. So what's happening here is we're not approving this today. What you're approving is the opportunity for the county to take advantage of being a part of this tremendous redevelopment effort that combines private partnership and county benefits that really take this Cumberland Mall to the next level and really take it to a place for the next coming decades along with the surrounding area that truly does reflect Cobb County's very own downtown. I'm available here to answer any questions. John Walker, Kate Triplett, our project engineers with King and Horn are here as well, can answer any technical questions you may have. But with those remarks, we'd respectfully request your approval of this rezoning application. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Moore. Commissioner Ott.
Mr. Chairman, first off, I want to thank Kevin and Brookfield Properties for working with me over the last year in creating a vision for Cumberland Mall. You know, we hear so many things about malls closing, having problems, and I commend Brookfield Properties for looking into the future with me and staff to come up with something that I think is going to be transformational, not just for the Cumberland area, but also for Cumberland Mall. It as Kevin said, it will survive. It's not going anywhere, and it's a tremendous example of a public-private partnership. When you look at the bus terminal, the ATL Transit Board just recently added it as one of the 9 items to their list that they recommended to the state legislature as a project that should be funded. I mean, that's a tremendous endorsement of what Brookfield and the county are trying to do here. I mean, it takes our Kiss and Ride lot and turns it into a much more viable transit hub for the county and for the citizens. Fire Station 29. we already have Station 30, and we've been talking about Station 31. Station 29 has been something that has been on the books for a long time. And due to the unavailability of land, it just hasn't been built. And now with the new developments that have gone on in the Cumberland area, the fire department really needs to get Station 29 up and running. And so I want to thank Brookfield Properties for working with fire department and DOT in creating space and an opportunity. I just think that this is it's a tremendous example of looking forward to the future. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to make a motion to approve a Z42, subject to all the Planning Commission recommendations and conditions, which includes Mr. Moore's letter, the site plan, and all staff comments and recommendations. I believe the Planning Commission got it right with their motion, so that would be my motion.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second with a discussion.
Go ahead, Commissioner Burrow.
I would just like assurance that the county bus terminal and fire station will be purchased, not leased.
And it says, Commissioner Burrow, in the stipulation letter under both the discussion of the fire station and the bus terminal that the county will be purchasing. For the the terminal, any money that comes from the Federal Transit Administration requires that the county have ownership. But in both cases, as you and I have discussed, it clearly states in the stipulation letter that the county will be purchasing the property.
Okay, I did not see that. Do you know what number it is and which letter? Is it
It's in the current stipulation letter. It's in the current stipulation letter that's on file. But,
from September 9th or from August 28th?
I'd have to look it up, but I mean, I'll just add that, I mean, I'll add a stipulation to make sure that the county will be purchasing the land for the bus terminal and also the fire station.
Thank you.
Any other comments, Commissioner Burrow?
No, sir, that's all.
Any other comments from the commissioner?
Excuse me, Chairman Boyce. Just for clarity's sake, Commissioner Ott, that would be the county would purchase the property if that would actually go forward, correct? Not this part of this.
Yes.
Yes.
Right. If the county moves forward on the bus terminal or the fire station, that they would purchase the property.
Okay, Commissioner Ott, I'm going to support your motion, but I'm deeply disappointed that there was no provision made for Panda Express being one of the.
Well, now you're missing the point there, Mr. Chairman. I believe Mr. Moore mentioned that there would be some restaurants there.
He mentioned Dick's Sporting Goods and LA Fitness, but he didn't mention Panda Express. So I just want you to know.
I think he was waiting for you to make the request.
There's probably already one there.
I won't put Mr. Moore in that situation. So with that, I call the question. All in favor, please raise your hand. Passes 4-0 with Commissioner Cupid absent. And let's take a recess until 11 o'clock.
the previous stipulation letter. And also, just as clarification, when we, in the motion where I said that the county would purchase the land for the fire station and transit station, that's when funds become available.
Okay,
So
so
I make that to amend my motion, make a motion to do that.
Commissioner Blake, you want to second that? Did you second it? All right. Any other discussion? Hearing none, call the question. Passes 5-0. Okay, now OB 39.
Sir.
I thought it was 4-0, so how can
Oh,
we?
I'm sorry, you're right, it was 4-0, because Commissioner Cupid was absent.
No, I'm here. I'm here. I voted.
For, Commissioner, for the original motion, you were for that one.
Okay, sure.
So thanks for bringing it up, Commissioner Burrows, so it passes 4-0. All right, now OB 39.
Yes, sir. Other business, item number 39 is to consider a stipulation of site plan amendment for Macklin Village LLC regarding rezoning applications Z140 of 2006 and Z70 of 2007. Property located at the southwest intersection of Macklin Road and New Macklin Road in land lots 460 and land lot 460 of the 19th district. By way of background, Mr. Chairman and Board, the subject property was rezoned in neighborhood retail commercial in 2007 for a variety of commercial uses. The property at the corner of Macklin Road and New Macklin Road was stipulated to be a 15,000 square foot retail building. The applicant would like to amend the approved site plan to allow a 4,800 square foot car wash. The applicant would also need to amend the minutes which prohibited automobile or truck related businesses, which would allow the car wash. The proposed car wash would be a tunnel style car wash in which all the washing takes place inside the building. The proposal would meet the required architectural, lighting, landscaping, and sign stipulations from the original zoning cases. If approved, all previous conditions should remain in effect. At this point, Mr. Chairman, we would ask the board to open up the public hearing for this case. There is no one virtually or in person here opposing, and the applicant is present. Make a brief presentation, Mr. Chairman.
All right.
Again, good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Kevin Moore here on behalf of the applicant in this other business application. The site plan you see on your screen is a site plan for a proposed 4,800 square foot car wash at the intersection of Macklin and New Macklin. That's that intersection that you see on your right-hand side of your screen of that site plan. It's New Macklin heading south. Along the top is Macklin Highway 360 that heads east and west as a main arterial and corridor in Cobb County. And what is proposed as part of this other business application is to finally provide some economic activity and economic trigger for this property. And I'll give you a little bit more context beyond that, which Mr. Peterson provided. This property actually is just almost 22 acres of property located at this intersection. It stretches a good ways down Macklin Road frontage as well as New Macklin Road frontage to comprise that 22 acres. In 2007, this property was the subject of actually 2 rezoning applications, ultimately approving a just over 9 acre portion of the 21 acre tract as RSL for an age-restricted senior residential development on property that is oriented along New Macklin Road. And then the remainder of the 11 to 12 acres or so of property, primarily along the Macklin Road and corner intersection of New Macklin and Macklin Road of commercial property to the NRC and LRO zoning categories. And that's how it was zoned in 2007. And that's obviously an important point in time because immediately thereafter, we went into the Great Recession. And this property has been owned for generations by the Garner family at this location. It had been used commercially back in its setting in West Cobb for many, many years as a small commercial location, as you might find, that was used for tractor repair, tractor sales, hardware store, things like that that were really needed by the community as it existed at that time. As that came forward, however, though, we ultimately rezoned this property for the Garner family for this mixed-use development. It's just the timing was very, very bad. The original rezoning that Mr. Peterson referenced, this particular corner showed a 15,000 square foot retail building set up with a drive-through for the purpose of a drugstore, a pharmacy, a CVS or Walgreens. Actually, it was going to be a CVS at that time. The recession hit and everything stopped. And then since that time, as you might know, those types of pharmacies or drugstores have gone the way of the dodo bird. There are no new drugstores such as Walgreens or Rite Aid or CVS stores that are going up. In fact, those companies have consolidated and they're no longer interested in having those types of locations anymore beyond the existing ones that they have. And even those, they are consolidating even further, and we've seen evidence of that even in our county and other surrounding areas. So the issue became one of how do we get the economic engine triggered? How do we light the candle, so to speak, to have this very visible property located at this highly visible location? How do we get this going? Because what was planned in 2007 is not achievable today. So what is achievable today and what can start the development process for this is the proposed car wash. It will meet all of the architectural requirements that are a part of the underlying zoning, which means it has to be predominantly brick and stone exterior. It will be a first-class type of car wash facility in operation and business. We have had discussions with some surrounding community members who have raised questions about, well, we don't believe the car wash is necessarily desirable for our area. What they have told us or communicated to us is what they want to see here is a sit-down restaurant. Unfortunately, again, that's not an economic reality today. It wasn't an economic reality yesterday, and it won't be an economic reality, we don't believe, in the future. We're continuing to try to talk with them about that. But you've got directly across New Macklin is the Keachern Methodist Church. It's been there for ages. That would place this corner property squarely within the prohibitions of an alcohol pouring license, for example, which becomes prohibitive from a sit-down restaurant perspective. More importantly, though, a sit-down restaurant at this location, they have the owner has looked and looked and would love to have that, of course. But it's just not a viable location for such an operation here, and especially now with our ongoing economic issues that we deal with and such. What we're really trying to do is bring this property forward. By doing, we can't wait and sit around, and the owner cannot simply sit around and wait for the economy to come to it. What we really strongly believe is that by allowing for the car wash to take place and providing that match, that light to trigger the economic activity for this property, it will generate the interest where the additional retail offerings and restaurant offerings that are available and that would be interested in this location can then know that this place can work and operate. For your information, if you're not familiar with this particular intersection, directly across the street is a Kroger shopping center that has been there for a good long while. It does have an existing CVS there that's been there for a while. It's just that this particular location now, those aren't interested any longer. That space has been occupied across the street, leaving this owner with an economic issue of how does he develop his commercially zoned and entitled property when it's restricted to a site plan that includes a location for a drugstore, which is no longer interested, as well as a stipulation that no automobile or truck-related business is allowed on site. That stipulation, by the way, was placed on there at the zoning hearing by the Board of Commissioners, not part of a stipulation. At the time, it really was meant and intended to prohibit auto part sales or auto sales or used car lots or any type of used car or auto or truck sales at this property. But of course, being a car wash, it is a automobile related business and thus prohibited. Therefore, we're coming to this board asking for this other business application to be approved, allowing for the car wash to be built and located here, and that would change both the site plan for this corner as well as remove that stipulation as it relates to this corner piece to allow simply for the car wash. Again, we believe this is a very reasonable request based on this property's location and the area, and we ask and respectfully request your approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Okay, John, what's the staff's recommendation?
Mr. Chairman of the Board, the staff would recommend the Board of Commissioners approve the request subject to Exhibit B, which is located in your other business packet, which was received by zoning on June 16, 2020, subject to the site plan received by zoning on June 16, 2020, District Commissioner to approve the final building architecture, the final site plan, signage, and landscaping plans, and all previous conditions not in conflict to remain in effect.
Thank you. All right, Commissioner Cupid.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate both the applicant, John Varner, and Kevin, in working with the community on this application. The applicant, who was the owner of the property, was on a Zoom call with a number of residents where we spoke about the consideration for this development in light of the interest of the community and in light of the history of this site. As was shared by Mr. Peterson, when this site came before the county for zoning, it had a specific stipulation that did not allow any automotive related uses. And so while the community is open to listening to the applicant, they're trying to understand what exigence has changed to remove that stipulation. And so they're not quite there yet, but I'm not saying they won't be. Mr. Varner did make some headway with the community, and their plan was to meet at the site and talk through some different ideas for the property. That meeting hasn't happened yet. I know Mr. Varner was willing, that the community still needs to get organized a bit more. There was some delay in the community getting involved. We had a road project that limited their ability to see the signage out there, which resulted in us waiting to this month to hear it. But they still want to communicate with the applicant, as the applicant shared that this development may be part of a larger development of that corner. And so they're trying to understand how this car wash fits into that. And even though they may not get the restaurant that they desire, there may be some other complementary uses that the community can buy into, which would compel them and compel me as a commissioner to remove that limitation that the applicant put on the prior zoning, which was not to have any automotive uses. I've dealt with the site in Mapleton at Buckner and Veterans Memorial, where we also had a similar situation where we have a retail location that limited automotive uses, and that community has fought tooth and nail to keep that from being considered. And I just want to be mindful of this community, and there just being a compelling reason as to why with this other business item, we need to remove that stipulation. And again, I think another meeting with the applicant might help get us there. So in communicating with members of the community and with Kevin, I would like to ask that we hold this into the October meeting so that we can facilitate that additional meeting with the residents to kind of understand the larger picture for what's going to take place at that corner.
Okay, so moved. Do we have a second? We have a second. All right, Commissioner Burrell seconded. Any other discussion? Hearing none. Commissioner Gamble, go ahead.
I heard Commissioner Cupid state that she had talked with the residents and Kevin Moore on the continuance. Has the applicant, through Kevin Moore, been contacted and agreed to a continuance?
I spoke to Kevin, and he can speak for himself, but we were in alignment on us holding this for today.
Okay.
That is correct, Commissioner.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so we're all on the same page. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, please raise your hand. And it passes 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think that's the last case, right, John?
Yes, sir. We are done.
Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you all.